Before anything, what you call a delay might be the most important moment of your life. Before you continue, it's important to understand something deeply, something most people only realize too late in life. What you've been calling delay, silence, or even abandonment may actually be the most strategic point of your entire journey, because not everything that looks like it's stopped is truly stopped, and not everything that looks lost is actually out of control. There are moments in life when what you see is misleading, and what you cannot see is working far more intensely than you realize. While you focus on what hasn't happened yet, processes are unfolding at levels you don't yet understand, within you, around you, and often beyond your perception. What you are about to hear is not just a simple reflection. It is a kind of understanding that reshapes how you interpret pain, frustration, and waiting. And when that changes, your response to life changes as well. Because in practice, not every silence is abandonment. Sometimes it is formation. Not every delay is absence. Sometimes it is preparation. And not every closed door is rejection. Often it is protection from something you are not ready to carry yet. The problem is that the human mind tends to interpret not immediate as negative. But the logic of life, especially when it involves growth, rarely works that way. What looks like a pause may be construction. What looks like blockage may be redirection. And what looks like an ending may simply be a shift in direction you cannot yet see. There is an invisible gap between promise and fulfillment that almost no one knows how to handle. In this gap, many give up. Others become emotionally lost, and only a few mature enough to move through it. And maybe this is the most important part. What you do while nothing seems to be happening may be exactly what defines everything that happens next. So before you draw conclusions about your life, before you believe something went wrong, before you call delay something you don't yet understand, you need to listen carefully to what comes next, because how you interpret this moment may determine the next level of your story. Sometimes it is God training you for something greater than you can handle today. And if this content speaks to you, don't ignore it. This may be exactly the kind of understanding that separates repeated cycles from a real breakthrough in life. The mistake almost everyone makes about delay. Most people believe in a simple spiritual sequence. If God wants to bless me, He opens the door immediately. But in the biblical pattern, the logic is different. Promise, process, test, approval, blessing. The problem is that almost no one likes the process part, because the process doesn't feel spiritual. It feels like silence. It feels like delay. It feels like being forgotten. But that is exactly where many fail. The biblical pattern, no one teaches you. The Bible does not romanticize blessings without maturity. Abraham and Isaac, the test of the heart. God promises a nation through Isaac, and then asks for Isaac. This was not about loss, it was about priority. Now I know that you fear God. Genesis 22:12. The test does not reveal God. The test reveals you. David anointed, but forgotten David was chosen to be king, but spent years running in the wilderness. He was not outside the plan. He was being shaped by it. The Lord is my shepherd. Psalm 23. The desert was not delay. It was character formation. Jesus, the Son of God, was tested before his ministry. Jesus was led into the wilderness. Matthew 4:1. If even the Son went through testing before his mission, why would it be different for you? The story of Leandro and Roberta. Leandro and Roberta were not cold in faith. They were consistent. They prayed every night, even when exhausted. They had cried many times in silence without telling anyone, and they carried a phrase like a covenant. God did not bring us this far to leave us halfway. But the truth is, They had been halfway for a long time. No answers, no signs, no visible change. And something began to erode inside them. Expectation. It was not just about money. It was about identity. They wanted a meaningful life, business ownership, stability, purpose. But time passed and nothing changed. And here is something important. God's silence is not empty, it is active. It works in the invisible while you only see what is missing. One day the door finally opened. A big contract, a real opportunity. Everything seemed perfectly aligned, but what looked like an answer was actually a hidden test. That same week, a technical error placed a large amount of money into their account. Unexpected money, fast, with no immediate trace. And this is where the real test begins. Roberta looked and said, "No one will notice." The silence in the house became heavy. The moment of decision. Leandro did not respond quickly. He was not deciding about money. He was deciding about identity. He remembered something simple but powerful. Proverbs 10:9. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely. And then he understood. That was not a blessing. It was a test disguised as a solution. He said, if this is ours, it won't come through an error. We are going to return it. Roberta cried, not because she disagreed, but because letting go hurts even when it is right. In that moment, they lost the contract. They lost the opportunity. They lost the quick exit. Or so it seemed. What they didn't know is this. God does not remove opportunities. He filters character. Luke 16:10. Whoever is faithful in little will also be faithful in much. Heaven doesn't rush unprepared people. It forms them first, then it gives. 6 months later, something unexpected happened. A new door opened, but it was not just an opportunity. It was a structure, a solid partnership, transparent, bigger, more stable, and 10 times stronger than the previous one. And then they understood something that changes everything. God was not late. God was aligning everything. The spiritual principle behind all of this. There is an invisible law here. God does not measure you by what you want to receive, or by what you can resist when shortcuts are available. Because the real test is not lack of resources. It is the presence of the wrong opportunities. The truth few are ready to hear. Maybe your life is not stuck. Maybe it is being filtered. Maybe what you call silence is God protecting you from something you are not yet strong enough to sustain. Conclusion: the desert is not the end. The desert was never meant to be a destination. It was a passage, and every passage has a purpose. It removes urgency. It reveals character. It tests faithfulness. It prepares destiny. Final question. You are not being forgotten. You are being observed. And now the question that defines everything. Will you remain faithful in the process or give up in the middle of the test? If this message spoke to you, it was not by chance. There are principles that only make sense when you go through the process. Subscribe to the channel to keep receiving content that deepens faith, purpose, and spiritual mindset. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part. It goes even deeper. And share it with someone who is waiting for an answer from God. And now answer honestly. I will pass the test.